Despite marrying Keith, my relationship with his mother and stepbrother Shane remained strained. However, one day, through Shane, my mother-in-law invited me to join them on a trip to Hawaii. I saw it as an opportunity to bridge the gap between us. Fate Hope accompanied me as I greeted the day. Before boarding, I entrusted my wallet to my mother-in-law. To my shock, she handed me divorce papers instead. What? Why? I stammered. It's because you can't get along with Shane and me, right? She retorted coldly. Keith has been complaining about you a lot. He's had enough, added Shane, sneering at me. With that, my mother-in-law walked away towards the boarding gate, leaving me in disbelief and anger as I stared at Shane's handwriting on the divorce papers. Enjoy your time with your real family. The fake mom can just sleep outside, I managed to say with a smile, masking my hurt. I've been patient because of Keith's family, but I'm done now. They'll regret hurting me. I'm Macy, a 50-year-old florist who also decorates event venues and wedding halls with my flower arranging skills. Divorced 10 years ago due to infidelity, I had resigned myself to a life without marriage until I met Keith, an event planner, 3 years ago. We married after a year of dating. Unlike my ex-husband, Keith is sincere and dependable, though not one for small talk or forced smiles. As someone who lost both parents, he became incredibly important to me. Despite these happy days, Shane, Keith's son from a previous marriage, remained distant. I tried my best to connect with him, but it seemed futile. As the one responsible for cooking, I made efforts to understand Shane's preferences and find common ground. I bought CDs of his favorite band and practiced their songs for karaoke. I watched the dramas he mentioned and even participated in a lottery for his favorite streaming service, gifting him the prize. Yet none of it seemed to resonate with him. Stop trying so hard to win me over, Shane's words cut through me like a knife. I'm not trying to win you over. I just want us to get along, I pleaded, hoping for a breakthrough. Shane regarded me with a deep, dismissive gaze. I'm not interested in becoming family with you. Just leave me alone. What stung even more was Shane's friendly facade around Keith. I remembered how, even before we married, Shane had been amiable during our outings, leading me to believe we could bond as a family. I understood it wouldn't be easy for an adult child to accept me as his mother, but Shane's demeanor behind closed doors was another story. Hey, old lady, could you refill the fridge? Where are my socks? His tone fluctuated, sometimes calling me names depending on his mood. When will you learn to cook like mom did? It's irritating how you act like a mom when you can't even cook, he'd mock and criticize relentlessly. Eventually, I couldn't bear it any longer. Shane, if there's something I'm lacking, please tell me. I'll do my best to improve, I implored. His response was a twisted smile. Figure it out yourself. Don't you have a brain? Maybe that's why you got cheated on, because you're so dumb. His words struck me into silence. You're just after Dad's money, aren't you? He should have picked someone younger and prettier. He jabbed at my appearance, leaving me speechless. It's still a mystery to me why Keith, someone with such charisma even in our work circle, asked me out. I thought back. One day, overhearing Shane and his friend, I learned Shane had dropped out of college and was adrift. Shane had asked me for $5,000 for a training program, and I had lent it to him. But when I brought it up later, he glared at me with disdain. Huh? Did I say that? You haven't even told Dad you dropped out of college, have you? Better come clean, he warned sharply. Shut up. Just remember what'll happen if you tell Dad. Shane's threat hung between us. I wondered if he intended to talk to Keith himself. It seemed clear that it would be better for Shane to explain directly rather than me informing Keith. After some deliberation, I decided to keep Shane's college situation from Keith. I desperately wanted to discuss Shane's cold demeanor with Keith, but he worked late almost every night, and I didn't want to add to his burdens. Since our marriage, Shane had allied with my mother-in-law, who harbored a strong dislike for me. She would frequently drop by our home, a 30-minute drive away, to critique the cleanliness and the meals, often finding fault. One evening after work, I was taken aback to find her cooking dinner in our kitchen. Glancing into the trash, I saw the ingredients I had prepared earlier tossed away. She served beef and potato stew at the dining table, facing Shane with a satisfied smile. Shane tasted the stew, his face lighting up. Grandma's beef and potato stew is the best, isn't it? She beamed. Macy, why don't you learn to cook from Grandma? Maybe then you could manage to make decent meals. It's a shame Keith and Shane have to put up with such terrible food every day. Leaving your husband and son to fend for themselves while you work isn't what a good wife does. Keith's just too kind, letting you take advantage of him. If Grandma lived closer, I'd have dinner there every night. I struggled to comprehend her audacity, throwing out my food and criticizing me while enjoying a meal. I only worked part-time, returning home early evening to manage all the housework during the week to support Keith, who was always busy. The unfairness of her criticism weighed heavily on me. My mother-in-law was visibly displeased with my decision to work. Why on earth did Keith remarry someone like you? He must have been deceived. You're just after his money, aren't you? Heath is kind and stubborn. I advised him to marry a young lady from a prestigious family suitable for a company president, but he insisted on choosing his own partner, she lamented. After more than 2 hours of criticism, my mother-in-law finally left, leaving behind only Keith's portion of dinner. I reluctantly ate with the side dishes I had on hand. Shane looked down at me with pity in his eyes and smirked. Grandma really despises you, doesn't she? It seems so. Instead of just trying to please Dad, why don't you make an effort to get along with your mother-in-law? I was astonished by his audacity after causing so much trouble. Still, I reasoned that as long as my mother-in-law lived separately, it was manageable. The real challenge lay in Shane's open hostility. That night, feeling despondent about our prospects of ever getting along, I sat quietly with Shane for dinner as Keith worked late as usual. While cleaning up afterward, Shane unexpectedly started a conversation. Hey, Grandma invited me to go to Hawaii. She suggested we all go together. I was taken aback. Ha! Are you talking to me? Yeah. Do you want to come? Yeah. She says going on trips can change how you see people. Maybe you and I could get along better. That's what Grandma thinks anyway, Shane continued, his face tinged with embarrassment. My mother-in-law chairs a group of family-run companies, so she's not retired yet. I'm happy she invited me on the trip, but more importantly, I'm glad to see her and Shane making an effort to get closer to me. So, keep the third week of next month free, okay? I asked Shane. Got it. I'll take the time off. That evening, when Keith returned from work, I shared the news. His voice dropped in disappointment. I've got a business trip overseas that week. Should I decline the invitation then? No, go ahead. If I can swing by Hawaii on my way back, we might grab a meal together. That would be nice, but you've been really busy lately. Are you getting enough rest? Keith voiced his concern with a gentle smile. I'm fine, thank you. Keith knew my mother-in-law's feelings towards me weren't positive. Her inviting me on the trip was surprising. She can be stubborn with a sharp tongue, but maybe she really wants to connect with Macy. Normally, you wouldn't invite someone you dislike on a trip. With that in mind, I decided I would make an effort to bond with my mother-in-law and Shane in Hawaii. Hopefully, we could turn our strained relationship into something we could laugh about later, bridging the gap between us. The day of the Hawaii trip arrived. Shane and I accompanied Keith to the airport. After seeing Keith off on his direct flight to Los Angeles, Shane and I waited in the lobby until my mother-in-law arrived, pulling her suitcase. I thanked her for inviting me on the trip, and she smiled brightly. Hey, Macy, to avoid any trouble, how about letting me hold on to your wallet in case you lose it? Ha! I'll cover our expenses when we shop in Hawaii, so you won't need to worry about that. Here's Shane's too. All right. Shane handed his wallet to his mother-in-law, and I took out my long wallet from my bag, handing it to her as well. She opened it, nodded approvingly, and said, You've brought your credit cards and cash. Good, I'll take care of it. As she placed my wallet in her bag, I noticed a knowing glance exchanged between my mother-in-law and Shane, followed by a smirk. A sense of unease crept over me as I observed their expressions. Keith asked me to give this to you. Could you open it now? My mother-in-law handed me an envelope, leaving me baffled. As I took out the contents, a sense of suffocation gripped me. A divorce notice? Why? I managed to utter, my voice trembling. My mother-in-law grinned triumphantly. You just can't seem to get along with Shane and me. Keith has been complaining about you to me a lot. I've heard it too. He's completely fed up with you, Shane added with a sneer. I felt as though the ground was slipping away beneath me. So, you're no longer needed. Goodbye. Ignoring my plea, my mother-in-law swiftly departed, pulling her suitcase behind her. I couldn't believe it. Keith, kind and sincere, had been badmouthing me behind my back to his mother and Shane. Staring at the signature on the divorce notice, I realized with widening eyes, it was Shane's handwriting. Though similar to Keith's, the distinct quirks gave it away. Devastation turned swiftly to rage. I had been naive to trust them to strive for connection on this trip. What a fool I had been. Useless. Maybe I would never travel overseas again. With a contemptuous smirk, Shane taunted, I'm off to enjoy time with my real family. You fake mom can sleep on the streets. I returned his sneer with a cheerful nod. Sure thing. I glared at Shane until he disappeared into the crowd. Until now, I had endured and held back because they were Keith's family. No longer. They would regret trampling over my feelings. Left stranded at the airport, I refused to succumb to Shane and my mother-in-law's cruelty. Using the transit card app on my phone, I calmly took the train home. Shane relied on his bicycle for university, and my mother-in-law only used her phone for calls and messages. They must have overlooked this detail. After returning home and letting some of my anger subside, I made a phone call to someone. Following that, I spent time lounging on the sofa, contemplating the Miss Hawaii trip. I reassured myself that I could go whenever I pleased and that it wouldn't have been enjoyable with such spiteful company anyway. With these thoughts comforting me, I spent the day leisurely reading books and watching dramas online, enjoying the solitude. It struck me that this was the first time I had been alone since getting married. Even when Keith was away on business, Shane or my mother-in-law would usually be around unannounced. Despite the ruined trip, having an entire week to myself, free from Shane and my mother-in-law, felt like a luxurious vacation in itself. The next day, after finishing my chores early, I treated myself to a movie and some shopping at the mall. In the afternoon, as I relaxed with tea and watched TV at home, my phone suddenly began ringing. I had been anticipating this call around this time. Annoyed by the incessant message notifications, I reluctantly answered, only to be met with Shane's shouting. Hey, old lady, get over to Hawaii right now. What? Don't be absurd. I'm at home. Grandma took my wallet and cards. How am I supposed to get back? I have a transit app on my phone with my credit card info. Honestly, I'm managing just fine. Whatever. Just get here. What happened? I asked, sensing Shane's agitation. Clearly upset, Shane responded gruffly, I had a reservation at the hotel's 3-star restaurant, but they wouldn't let me in. Oh, really? Why not? I asked innocently, enjoying his frustration. That damn owner said, unless Miss Macy is with you, I'm afraid we can't serve you. Can you believe it? So, I missed out on the beef fillet steak. Such a shame. The view from the 36th floor is amazing, and the steak is so tender and delicious. I couldn't help but chuckle as Shane continued his rant. It was evident he was still fuming over the incident. Shane continued ranting, even if I try other restaurants in the hotel, they turn me away at the door. The staff are whispering about us in English. It's so uncomfortable. Grandma and I ended up having banana juice for dinner at a convenience store. There's a supermarket outside the hotel, right? You really know your stuff, Shane muttered suspiciously, but his frustration quickly resurfaced. Damn it. Why did I come all the way to Hawaii just to have banana juice? Grandma got so angry her blood pressure shot up, and she had to lie down. This is all your fault. I'm sorry. I apologize to avoid any further hassle. It's your fault, so you should compensate us for the hotel and meal expenses. We had a terrible experience because of you, so you should pay. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. Okay, fine. Wait, really? Yes, but first, you need to repay the $5,000 I lent you, and make sure you do it before I file for divorce. Well, even after adding the hotel and meal expenses, there will still be change left over. Shane fell silent suddenly. He must have been planning to default on his debt to me amidst the divorce chaos. Not that I had any intention of divorcing in the first place. After a brief silence, Shane spat resentfully, just give that $5,000 to your stepchild as a gift. Such a stingy woman. This is why poor people will always be poor. He had the audacity to say whatever he pleased. At this point, I was so furious I almost burst out laughing. Then, I heard my mother-in-law's voice in the background. Shane, are you talking to Macy? Yeah, Grandma. If you have something to say to her, better say it before we get divorced. We won't be seeing each other much longer. Let me talk to her. Macy, was your maiden name Smith? Her voice was tense. Yes, that's correct. I thought this question would come up sooner or later. Then are you from the Smith group? Yes, my brother is now in charge. There was a strange noise from the other end of the line. It seemed like my mother-in-law was about to faint, and Shane was panicking. Grandma, What's wrong? If you're not feeling well, you should rest, Shane urged with concern. No, I'm fine, my mother-in-law replied, trying to steady herself. So that's why we managed to get a reservation at that popular restaurant so easily, she murmured, still in shock. The Smith Group. They're the chain of restaurants popular with celebrities, right? They've got quite a reputation overseas too, Shane exclaimed. There was a pause before Shane realized, wait, she's the daughter of the Smith Group? It seems so. No one told me this. Were you keeping it a secret? My mother-in-law asked sharply. What a conniving woman, Shane started ranting again. But I stayed composed. That's odd. I'm certain I mentioned it during our pre-marriage introductions. Keith definitely knows. Oh, did I forget? I've been so forgetful lately. It's troublesome, my mother-in-law replied, half listening to the discussion about her future daughter-in-law. I did mention it. My father was the president of the Smith Group before he passed away. I inherited his wealth, so I haven't needed money. I married Keith not for his money, just to be clear. Oh, I see. Then why are you working as a florist? You could live off Keith's earnings. A wife should quit her job and devote herself to her husband and children, my mother-in-law asserted. That's your opinion, I calmly replied. In that case, I'll take back that $5,000, Shane interjected. Man, I should have asked for more from a wealthy person like you. Missed opportunity, he added, reverting to his usual snide remarks. Both my mother-in-law and Shane seemed momentarily stunned but quickly resumed their usual demeanor. The money I lent Shane needs to be repaid, I insisted. That's a separate matter, isn't it? My mother-in-law deflected. You haven't filed the divorce papers yet, have you? Shane smirked. Well then, invest $1 million in our company, my mother-in-law demanded. I was speechless. What a wife should do seemed to be pocket change to them. I couldn't do that. Even if I had the money, I couldn't give it to you. My mother-in-law's tone shifted from whining to aggressive. What's wrong with you, stingy woman? Don't you want to be useful at all? I pity Keith for marrying someone like you. She continued her tirade, making baseless threats. Fine, when Keith arrives in Hawaii tonight, I'll poison his mind against you. He'll despise you and want a divorce. I might even fabricate some stories. Dad's so naive. He'll probably believe anything if I play the victim. Shane joined in eagerly. If you won't cough up the cash, we don't need a stuck-up daughter-in-law like you. I'll just tell Keith you wrote those divorce papers yourself. He's the type to take things seriously. This is going to be fun tonight. You don't have to wait until tonight. I've been listening the whole time. Keith's voice came through the phone, startling them. Keith, you were supposed to join us after your business trip. You said you'd be working until yesterday and flying to Hawaii tonight, my mother-in-law stammered. I received a copy of the divorce papers from Macy, and it caught me off guard. I called her back immediately. I heard everything and was skeptical, so I wrapped up my work and rushed back home to hear Macy and your conversation, Keith explained calmly. Dad, you're misunderstanding, Shane tried to interject, his tone feigning sweetness. It's too late for excuses. I've been listening to the whole conversation on speakerphone. Who's really in the wrong here? Macy was the one being mistreated. How dare you? She even prepared those divorce papers out of kindness, Keith interrupted sharply. My mother-in-law retorted defiantly, well, you two are flying back tomorrow, right? I've already notified the authorities. I added, police, we haven't done anything wrong. Shane, you filled out the husband's section of the divorce papers, didn't you? That's forgery of a private document. You're getting arrested. My statement sent them into a frenzy, launching a blame game over the phone. Grandma, if I'd known we'd get arrested, I wouldn't have gone along with it. What are we going to do now? Shane panicked, turning on my mother-in-law. That's none of my concern. Shane planned and executed this whole thing, she deflected, trying to evade responsibility. To Macy? Seriously, Shane exploded, arguing with his grandmother over the phone. The conversation was far from over. Mom, you knew Shane dropped out of college and was blowing money at strip clubs. You turned a blind eye and even gave him an allowance, didn't you? Keith's voice cut through the tension. Yeah, so what? What's wrong with supporting my dear grandson? Shane backed her up defiantly. Keith's tone turned cold. As long as it's your own money, fine. But if it's company funds, that's embezzlement, a serious crime. Shane's voice trembled over the phone. That sounds bad, right? I'm just a figurehead president. My salary is low. Spare me, please. If this gets out, I might lose my chance to inherit Dad's company. That's not going to happen. I'm going independent, Keith declared firmly. Shane protested. That's not what we agreed. You promised I'd be your successor after I graduated. Who dropped out after a year? Fine, I'll enroll in a new school and study properly this time. Keep your promise and let me be your successor. Do you think I can entrust my company to a son who treats Macy so disrespectfully? Keith's words filled me with warmth. He was standing up for me. Enduring their insults all this time felt worthwhile. My mother-in-law's voice echoed through the phone, shrill and furious. Whether Shane wrestled the phone from her or she seized it herself, her rapid-fire accusations followed. Keith, this is a joke, right? Choosing that woman over your own mother and your son Shane. It's absurd. You'll regret this decision. Please reconsider. Keith's response was firm and resolute. After how you both treated Macy, this is fair. You're blinded by profit, not family, he retorted sternly. I care more about Macy, who isn't even blood related but has shown genuine care, than a family like you. There was a brief pause, then Keith hung up abruptly, blocking her number and messages. Macy, if they try to contact you, just ignore them. Okay, are you really cutting ties with them? I asked, feeling anxious. Keith nodded decisively. Yes, I've made it clear to my mother. I won't tolerate anyone disrespecting you like that. I'm sorry you had to endure it for so long. I was too caught up in work. It's okay. From now on, I'll support you in place of your mother and Shane, I reassured him. After my mother-in-law and Shane returned to Japan, they attempted to evade the police by staying in a hotel. However, Keith promptly informed the authorities of their whereabouts, leading to their swift apprehension. The forgery attempt, which I had intercepted and not submitted, resulted in a stern warning due to it being their first offense. News of their arrest spread quickly, tarnishing my mother-in-law's image in the neighborhood. Doubtless after being removed from her position for embezzlement, she retreated to her home. When relatives visited, they found her in disarray, a stark contrast to her former fashionable self. It also came to light that Shane had borrowed money from not only his mother but several relatives to fund his extravagant lifestyle. With Keith cutting ties, relatives demanded repayment immediately to prevent further deception. To ensure Shane complied, one relative offered him shelter and a job as a handyman, deducting his salary to settle his debts. Under constant surveillance, Shane found himself humbled, working alongside younger colleagues who now directed him. Meanwhile, true to his word, Keith launched his own company with trusted associates. I continued my work at the flower shop, occasionally lending my skills in venue decoration, which garnered praise and even assignments from Keith's clientele. Knowing my contributions enhanced Keith's business filled me with pride and motivation to continue supporting him with dedication.